these may take a couple more years, but these aren't far off. And when these industries hit, these are going to make a big splash.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, people want to have that good diet, and you made a really interesting point there in terms of we look at our food and we don't even think about necessarily what makes up that food and all the chemicals that are in that food, and then how those chemicals interact with everything else that we're eating. So I have like intestinal or GERD and intestinal issues and everything, and I found out that so much of it was just the things I was eating, and I initially started taking like Prilosec to try to take care of it, and that would do something. But once I started like learning, oh well, I can't eat blueberries. Okay, it's kind of disappointing, but I can't eat blueberries. Oh, I can't really eat these certain kinds of apples. Okay, well that's okay. But now I understand what I can eat, and it doesn't happen anymore, right?
That's right.
And yeah, and so people don't really understand. Like they just look at food. It's like, oh, it's healthy, or it's not healthy, right? And that's the two classifications that we give it, and it's understandable because like I never want to say that somebody doesn't have the ability to learn these things, but I find that so many people just they don't have the time, they don't have the energy, they don't have the resources, and they just don't know where to start looking, right? And so it's just it's so challenging for somebody to dive into this, and so they just fall back on the marketing and all the research that all these other companies have done. I mean, it is research, but it's not necessarily pointing to the right thing. It's pointing to, oh, we're going to sell more of this product, and so yeah, it just comes back down to that whole thing again of how do we get people to change their minds. And it definitely is happening as more and more data comes out and people can access things on the internet, which is also a whole other issue too, because they can access things that are completely false.
Yep.
But it's people do have the access points, and so if they can just start digging a little bit, then they may experiment here or there, they may try something out. But again, it comes down to that long term thing that we really want to think that things are going to change overnight, like all these weight loss programs, like, oh yeah, you're gonna lose 40 pounds in a week. Like that is not healthy to do. Like the whole idea that you're gonna enjoy all this food and bulk up and everything, and then you're just gonna get rid of it all at once. Like your body needs time to be able to recalibrate, to understand, okay, I'm carrying this much weight around, I have all these fat stores in these different places. There's just so many nuances that it just takes time for people to understand. But again, that long-term side effect, or that long-term effect of it, it takes time for these things to change. It's just trying to get that to be ingrained in somebody's mind. Like it's not gonna happen overnight, but it will happen over multiple years. I think this is, I mean, almost completely stepping away from nutrition. This is something that we're seeing, or we've at least seen in the first few years of the hemp industry in the United States. Too many people jumped in thinking they would become millionaires overnight, and then they realize, oh, well, actually, it's going to take me a few years or a decade or something to really be able to get money back.
A lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. And so, yeah, it's just, again, going back to like hemp or cannabis can branch off into all these other groups, and it can really show people that, oh, I can actually change my life, and I can actually become better, and I can actually get healthier and really understand what's going on. And so when I take something or I eat something, like I can know that that thing affected me in this negative way or in this positive way, versus trying to rely on a doctor that you're seeing once every 6 months, and they're not really understanding. You're also seeing them in this scenario where you're probably getting slightly more anxious, and so your vitals are at different stages. And there's just so many aspects to that like, I mean, there's new technologies coming down the road that like you're when you pee in the toilet, like you'll be able to analyze your urine and be able to understand what's going on. And that kind of stuff is amazing, right? Be able to understand on a daily basis, like even just having like a heart rate monitor on your wrist, like be able to understand just that little bit of detail and that little bit of the metrics that we can actually pull from, that's not just anecdotal. Because when you try to look back, unless you have like a eidetic memory, if you try to look back on your life, or even like a week ago, like how you were feeling exactly, or like what you ate exactly, like unless you're writing every single thing down, like you're not going to remember that, right? And so if you can have some way of tracking that data, it can really help. So yeah, so it's a really fun industry to be in, because we are diving into all these new fields, and we are really being able to get engrossed in, okay, our nutrition does this, and taking these cannabinoids does this, and the pharmaceutical is just targeting one specific thing, not actually targeting the whole body, like and bringing people again back to that, all these things that are put into the pseudoscience category. And there's definitely things that should belong in the pseudoscience category, but there's so much of it that's just, maybe it's explained in the wrong way, or it's just misunderstood in terms of the science and the data that we have on it. And so it's exciting to see where we're going to go, but it's all, as you said, it's going to take decades to get to that point to really understand it.
I'm hoping it doesn't. I'm hoping
Yeah.
that, as we move forward, my team has technology in 4 different pillars: the medicine, the industrial building, food, and energy. And we have proprietary technology and patents in all of those. And they're very, very, very different than anybody else is doing. And I know that there are other people out there with doing their own individual things. I think as each segment advances, when people start to see hempcrete, they'll say, okay, hemp. Okay, well, I heard about hempcrete. Well, what's this CBD and this medicine thing? And I'm hoping that as each industry develops, they'll kind of feed into each other, and this whole concept will unlock very quickly. Because somebody who's living in a hemp home won't necessarily be taking CBDs, but they'll say, yeah, I understand hemp. Yeah. And I think that's our leg right there. So we have so many different products and so many different divisions, and it's just a function of getting people out there who I guess people view as credentialed, and then we have to compete with the convenience factor. If we're
Yeah.
going to create hemp food, it has to be just as convenient as McDonald's. You have to be able to drive up, pick it up, and go. And once you break that, that's the huge problem right there. Is about convenience and the flavor. Like, they figured out how to use sugar and salts and all this stuff to trick your brain right into doing exactly what they want. You drive by a McDonald's, they're blowing burger smell right across the road, so you smell it when you drive by, and that's how they work. But until you really start to control yourself, and to think for yourself and to say, hey, you know what, that might not be a great choice. Maybe I should do this. You've got a steep hill there. But like I say, if we can get more of these products out and make them more convenient for people to use and start to get them into their daily lives, more than just CBD. CBD has been a wonderful jumping off point, but it's also going to head to head with THC, which still has that negative connotation with it. So they're both kind of being viewed at the same way. When you tell somebody to take a CBD, they're like, oh, I don't want to get high. That's because there's still THC being pushed, and people still have this mentality. There's no clear marketing being done to tell people what the difference is. And like we've already said, it's going to take time to get people to understand that. So I'm hoping, like we say, as we start to develop things, we start to gain more of a reputation. People understand that we're not a voodoo science, that we're not a group of people who are just, producing products to make money. That all of us are here as part of this association to really change the future, to have sustainable off-the-grid hemp homes, with geothermal, with solar, with wind, with all of the biofuels. To have all your food grown right outside, and to have a hemp field out back so you can take your medicine and your building materials and all of your stuff. This is what this would be heaven for me. Yeah, I can get out and go and work in my fields for 3 hours in the morning, grab a surfboard and go surfing all day. I haven't got to drive an hour to a cubicle and sit there for 9 hours or 10 hours and go home and work at night so my boss isn't mad at me in the morning because I didn't get my job done. I don't know why we're doing this, but it doesn't make sense to me. So to really give people that option to live a little freer and to live fully sustained, where you're not waiting for somebody else to manufacture a loaf of bread and bring it to your local market. Look at what's happening right now. This is a scary future. You have to start to look at what you're doing and to really make yourself a little more independent, and understanding where your food sources come from is a primary factor. Then understanding where your medicine comes from is your secondary concern. Then where are you going to live is your third concern. And then how are you going to get your power? That's your fourth concern. When you finish all 4 of those, you can take a vacation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Your home will still be there when you come home.
Yeah, exactly. And you made a good point on that, somebody can start in one thing. Like whenever, one of my favorite things about the hemp industry is I get to talk to many different minds, and I just love talking to people and learning. And so because I get to have all these touch points, I can talk to practically anybody. And so what I always find is that the best way to get somebody kind of thinking about it, maybe not completely on board, but thinking about it, is to target them with, like, if I'm talking to a construction worker, I can be talking about hempcrete, or I can talk about particle board, or I can talk about thermoplastics and composites. If I'm talking to a pharmaceutical rep, I can talk about cannabinoids and all that kind of stuff. And so there's so many places, and then people can slowly be drawn into that not the void, but so to speak, bringing into that collective. And it's definitely, I've always kind of had this vision. It's probably going to take us decades, maybe not decades, because also as you said, like tools are getting better, right? We have AI that can now take all this like hundreds and thousands of data points and synthesize them and understand them in a very short amount of time. And then we can like take, and there's just so many new technologies that allow us to advance at a much faster rate. But something that I've always kind of had a vision for is a lot of things. Like we very much need to have a local community, right? We need to have local environments,
Oh yeah.
and we need to have local markets. But at the same time, we can't necessarily completely neglect global, right? Because maybe in your community somebody doesn't have the knowledge base to design a tool that you need to use, right? However, the way that I look at it is that if hemp can become all these different materials and it become a wider variety of materials, maybe other plants as well can become all these materials. You could grow them all locally. You could have a local manufacturing plant that like essentially somebody brings all the material in from their farmers or whatever land they're growing on. And then somebody can, whether it's in your community or designed elsewhere, design something, right? And then you can 3D print it or manufacture it right on the spot, manufacture practically anything you need right there in your local community. So the people that are locally, they're getting paid for it or whatever kind of revenue source that they need. And then the people that are globally, they're also getting paid for their design. And then the people that are, again, locally, you're not shipping something to one country, manufacturing a little bit, shipping to another country, manufacturing a little bit, and then finally shipping it to the end consumer. You're designing it in a different place, but all the production and manufacturing of materials is happening locally.
Yep.
And that's, I mean, maybe it's a pipe dream, but it's something that more and more research I do, I'm finding that more and more things and technologies are coming out that are going to make that a closer reality. And it's just,
and that almost has to happen as far as I'm concerned. Last year I was in Oregon at the end of the season, and I watched a couple million pounds of material rot because it was sitting on a concrete floor. They just didn't have the ability to process it quick enough. And I said, okay, so you grew this, but you didn't think about how you were going to dry it and process it. Okay, boys, cart before the horse here. You got to think about, and they shot themselves right in the foot and they lost a lot of money doing it. So you're right. You can't be shipping this stuff a long way. You can't be waiting days to get it into a dryer. You can't be waiting all of this time for things to happen. One, because the product is changing. CBD will convert, THC will convert. I mean, your product when you harvest it is not going to be the same as when you're done processing. So you have to get it through that process rapidly. But we also can use these locally.
Yeah.
No matter what, whether you're feeding people, whether you're building biofuels, whether you're building houses, there's just so many things that we can do to change just our local environments. And especially back where I come from, there were a lot of dairy farmers, and they're really struggling now. They have been for quite a while.
Oh, yeah.
But when I talk to them and I tell them about the product point or the price point for growing hemp per acre, they're instantly, excited. But then you have to bring back the reality to them. One, it's hard to harvest, okay? You may lose your crop to it being hot, but there are challenges. But if they come in and they see a consortium who's sitting there saying, you grow it and bring it to us, we got you, a series of experts, and then you can start to get farmers to really say, okay, you know what, it's a bit of a risk still, but I've got a great group of guys who have everything proven, embedded, go for it. Then the farmer can really jump in with confidence and make money and change his industry. I don't think you're going to see a lot of guys changing, a family industry that's been out there for 150 years just on a whim.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I currently live in Albany, but I grew up in Gilbertsville, New York, which is right in between. It's right near Oneonta, middle of nowhere. Anybody that comes to visit me, they're always looking for cell reception, but it just doesn't exist. And all of my neighbors are farmers, and luckily I was able to grow. When I was living there, I was able to grow acres just right down the road. So it was like I could just drive there. It was lovely. And it's definitely something that I found a lot is that. When I was growing it, I knew there wasn't processing, so I knew I wasn't going to be able to sell my material. But I was just doing it because I wanted to be able to put seed in the ground and actually grow a plant. Because there's only so much research you can do by reading papers. You need to actually like touch the material and handle it to really understand what it does. And yeah, that's definitely something that I came across a lot. Was all these farmers were like, "Oh, this is so cool. This is exciting." But am I actually going to make money on it? Is there an infrastructure supporting me? Like, yeah, we could grow thousands of acres tomorrow. I could go out and get tons of farmers and pay them to grow thousands. But if we don't have anywhere to sell it to, we don't have any infrastructure supporting it. It's only going to go so far. And this is actually something that I talked with Mark Proprietera was the whole idea that we really need to start with a product, right? We need to get a place to sell the material. Then we need to get manufacturing going so that we can actually manufacture that material, and then we can start growing. But so many people are trying to go the opposite direction. They're like, oh, if I just grow, everybody will come and buy my material. But so much in the CBD land or cannabinoid land, the seed is just crap. It's just not good quality. I mean, the early stages when like the hemp industry was first starting out in the United States, it was great quality seed because there were very few growers, and all the seed being produced was being produced initially in the illegal spaces. And so it was bred over many years, and they were able to produce this genetics that was just very stable. Whereas now you have all these people popping up. I mean, it's calming down. It's definitely, seed is getting a little bit more reliable, but it's there were so many people are just jumping and being like, oh, I'm going to sell you my first year grown crop, and it's not stable at all, but I'm going to sell it as stable because nobody knows what they're looking for. And so there was just a lot of kind of chaos that happened there. And then what happens with that is that even if the farmer grows it, and even if they could find a buyer, that buyer, it costs them X amount of dollars to process X amount of material, no matter how much cannabinoid content is in it, right? And so they're going to process the highest quality cannabinoid material they can, and if they can't find it in the state, they're going to go elsewhere, right? And so you could grow as many acres as you want, but if you don't have a good quality crop, they're not going to buy it, right? Unless they're just willing to throw a bunch of money down the toilet. And so there's just all these challenges that come with it. And so, yeah, I very much agree that in order to get a farmer on board, because also I think many people don't realize that many farmers don't actually make money each year. Many farmers actually are losing money every single year. And so if they don't make that money that they're trying to make, they're not going to survive for the next year, right? Unless they're a massive industry farm, but there's few and far between with those. And even in those cases, there's so many little components and factors that if they don't go just right, they're not going to have a crop, they're not going to be able to make any money, and they're not going to exist. And so, and then also on top of that, we talked about like people need to know where their source is, right? Where the source material is coming from, the source of the food is coming from, because we go into a grocery store and it's great. Grocery stores are very convenient. You can go and you can buy all the different products you possibly want in one convenient place, but it's also, it limits your understanding of where your food is coming from. It limits on your understanding of where your materials are coming from when you're buying stuff from China. Like, great, China has all this innovation. They can manufacture all these things. But when you don't know that, oh, this material was mined in this mine and it came, like, you don't know all the steps in the supply chain, you're very disconnected from it. And then you also kind of perceive that anything, like right now during all this pandemic and everything, people just, even if manufacturing completely shuts down, people assume that, oh, we'll still be able to get food in our grocery stores. We'll still be able to get all this stuff. They don't realize that it actually takes infrastructure. It actually takes all this stuff to manufacture these products. And so maybe where you stand and maybe kind of looking forward, and of course, we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the future, but how long do you think it will be before there's an infrastructure and supply chain robust enough that you can like point and be like, that's the hemp industry? I mean, like we can point at the corn industry and be like, these are the supply chain parts, that this is the supply chain. We know it's the industry. I mean, there's lots of nuances to it, so it's kind of complicated, but.
Yeah, well, let me give you my view on this. This industry it's very tedious right now. It's standing on a razor's edge, and here's why. Even if you convince a farmer to grow, okay, and they have to go through tests a couple times a year, somebody comes out, clips something. The THC content of one plant on one side of a field can be completely different than the other. I did this test this year with, so I helped 2 different groups grow in northern New York. Their first year, last year. And what I was doing was testing and watching the state. So what I would do is when they came out to harvest, I would wait till they left, and I would take a chunk of the same plant right next to where they took it, and I sent it off to an independent lab. Just watching. Toward the end of the year, they came back and they said that the final crop had 0.42% THC in it. The other lab came back at 0.37 or 0.27. So in one of them, it was actually legal, and then the other, it was illegal.
Illegal, yeah.
So how do we remediate this? Who's got the better instrumentation? Who's truly deciding what is enough of enough? Because look, even if it's 0.4, I can take that into purification and still make it a usable product with no THC in it. That should not be a standard that decides whether or not somebody is going to be a survivable farm or a not survivable farm. That's garbage.
Yeah,
That's the first thing we need to address. So quality control is at the very forefront of me and my group's entire vision. And we're working with some very powerful corporations. I won't mention them yet, but we are designing an entire series from gas chromatograph to liquid chromatography to mass spec, and we are actually deciding now about the future of quality control, and we are actually thinking and debating about building our own mass spec database, so that we have a proprietary database that we can compare all our stuff to, away from everybody else, so that we can have an argument when somebody comes back against us like this. So that's the first challenge, right? Is there. The second challenge is exactly what you just said, the genetics. So the other thing we're doing now is we're working on genetics, because I found out you can actually make a lot more money from seed than weed.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, genetics is like it's like owning the oil versus owning the oil refinery. It's it's far more lucrative.
Yep. And it's very tricky. And so I've worked with a few guys out in Oregon, a few guys in Washington. And they have some beautiful strains, some beautiful feedback, beautiful data, but they're only just coming to the market, maybe this year, maybe next year. So, there are strains that will come down the road that will be more well qualified, more stable, and the growers will figure that out. I have all the confidence in the world to the geneticists who do that. They are wonderful guys. But until we get there and we have something that is qualified by an agency, which really there is no agency yet, who's standing back with a full database saying, okay, this is where you need to be, or this is where you have to be, and setting those industry standards, you're never going to get to the end. It's a game of cat and mouse, really. And people aren't going to take that risk. They're not going to say, okay, I'm going to spend this much money to grow a crop and then get shot in the foot at the end of the year because of bad testing. You're not going to convince people to do it. So yeah. That in and of itself is a little embarrassing more than anything, but it's something that we will address. It's something we'll get right. Beyond that is, of course, identifying the products. Being that there is, say 100,000 products. I don't care how many you put up. Who actually knows how to make them yet?
Yeah.
Who's done the R&D to figure out exactly how to process it? Well, I have. I know a few other guys who have, but that's not the industry standard. There's still a lot of product development happening, and in a lot of very advanced fields like battery design and things like this, these may take a couple more years, but these aren't far off. And when these industries hit, these are going to make a big splash. And so I think I would say maybe 5 years, you'll start to see a major turnaround, because by then we'll have small consortiums set up where we're starting to see an efficiency of process. Once we get that efficiency of process, quality control, and reproducibility in place, then the industry will expand much more rapidly. But I would say within 10 years, at the maximum, you're going to start to see products integrated into your life almost seamlessly.
Yeah.
Have them in everything and you won't even know it.
Absolutely.
But they'll be much more healthy, they'll be much more sustainable, and they'll actually work,
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say 10 years to be conservative. But I think within the next 5 years or so, you're going to see a major shift, because, like I said, there's still a lot of states that are deciding how they're going to handle this. There's still not a lot of people who are taking this to what I would consider the critical level. Me and my team are taking it right to a pharmaceutical level, the way that we design our products. But that's because of our background,
Yeah.
You're not going to go out and hire necessarily a pharmaceutical chemist to come in and run your THC extraction lab. You probably should, but I just don't know about how other people, view that. And so, like I said, again, once you get more credentialed people who realize that this is a viable industry and they can come here and make a living, and they can actually put their brains toward doing this instead of doing something else, and we start to attract those really leading minds to get into this. It's going to be a little bit of an uphill climb, but we've made so much progress just in the last few years, and with places like Colorado and California really leading the way and pushing, and bless them for doing it, because somebody had to really knock the gate down. I still think people are very much tiptoeing forward into this, and even when they tiptoe into it, I don't want to say it in a negative way, but I see a lot of waste in capital. Like I said, if you
Majorly.
don't have a product and a plan and you're dumping a bunch of money into designing a lab, okay, well, that seems a little,
Yeah.
ahead of the
As you said,
game
the cart
here.
before the horse.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so, I think a lot of those mistakes were made over the last few years as a lot of excitement came in and people were like, oh, I want to be first in and I don't care what it costs. Now people are becoming a little more cautious and they're started to really vet out ideas. But that's wonderful because that means the ideas that are critical and that are going to make the difference and make the impact are being focused on. Like I said, you have to start narrowing your focus. And once we start to see a couple of those products that are out there and people go, oh yeah, that's the only product I use. That's going to be an industry change,
Yeah.
And you never know. It could be biofuels, it could be food, it could be medicine, it could be in construction. One of them will hit and start to really change people's views.
Yeah. Really
So
start
I
growing
would
the
say,
roots.
yeah,
But
I
yeah,
would say
5 to 10
conservatively
years.
10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that estimate, and to kind of like wrap up and touch on your points here. Yeah, definitely the quality control aspects. I mean, not only different places in the field, but different places on the plant too. Like you can get the
Oh,
top of the
absolutely.
plant, and it'll be completely different from the bottom, like the bottom parts of the flower. And so that's a major aspect. And then also, as you said, all these different testing standards and testing methods are going to come back with completely different results. And so if you don't have any sort of standardized method or understanding how to compare these two different testing methods together to kind of get an even result, you're just not going to know. And then also, as you mentioned, on the aspect of the research and how people don't understand how much research it takes to get a product to market. After my 1 year in college, I worked in specifically on batteries, battery manufacturing plant. I was in the R&D lab. I got to play with all the toys, but like understanding the slow development, right? You make a slurry, you try it with a few slightly different tweaks here or there. You put that slurry onto your plate or whatever kind of metal you're using. You then make the anode, the cathode. You put them together. You put them into a pouch. Put the electrolyte in. Then you test it, right? And then you test it. You maybe make like 10 of those. You test all of them to try to get standardized amounts off of it. And then you have to make a whole other batch of them in order to, like, you found something out. Okay, well now you need to make another batch in order to test the result of that to really understand what you're doing. And the amount of time and money that it goes into that, it's tremendous, and people definitely do not realize that. They think that they can just take a product, run to market, and it's going to be really easy, but there's just so much that goes into that. And then, as you said, the products too. Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of people in the hemp industry that are like, oh, we're going to sell hemp products to the market. But I think that really the best way to get into the market is not to sell a hemp product, but to sell just a product. Many consumers may not even know that they're using hemp, right? They have no idea that the hemp is even in the product, but hemp is in the product, right? And
because it's better than what's on the market.
Yeah, exactly. And many of the ways that I've been kind of pushing this, working with the research company, we're essentially a think tank or consortium of multiple different groups. We're working with like 8 to 10 different universities on various different projects. Many of them are in Albany, so like RPI and Union and such. But the biggest factor is trying to work with them to develop a product that we can fit into somebody else's supply chain that already is manufacturing products, already has a sales place, already has money and capital going into it, already has a marketplace that they can sell into, and then say like, okay, start with changing 5% of your product to hemp. Start there. Okay, it works great. Okay, we're going to up it to 10%, and just start there. And once you can do that, like, yes, startups are really great, and we definitely need startups. We definitely need people jumping into other things, but we really want to just start the market going, put the hemp into an already moving car versus trying to get that car up to speed, right? If you try to get that car up to speed, it's going to take a much longer time versus getting the moving car already going. Then maybe you can tie it onto your car and eventually it'll start tugging along. And so it's definitely, there's many things we need to change, but yeah, as you said, the quality control, major factor. Genetics, major factor. And as you said, genetics, it's very challenging, but it's incredibly lucrative. Before I got into this research side of things, I was with a CBD company that's just bad business management, and I quickly got out of it. It's no longer around today, but I ended up working with a geneticist, and he had been in the marijuana industry for like 25 years, and just like understanding all the applications that you have, and just understanding how to breed these plants, and also like you can you have like a shipping container and like 2 or 3 plants, you can break the branches, split them off into multiple things, and you can get tons of seed from one single plant versus growing like 100 different plants. And so there's just so much to that, but it's incredibly challenging to actually do the engineering, may not necessarily be the best word, but the breeding protocols to understand that. And it's absolutely incredible. And so I'm with you that probably about 5 years is like when we're going to see major changes really start to occur. The things that people that are now getting into the industry, or maybe were in the industry previously, but were a little bit more conservative, not just jumping right on the bandwagon and try to run with it. They were like, okay, well, this is just like any other industry. This is an industry, right? We can't just like, definitely certain things apply to hemp that don't apply to other things, but there's a lot of things that apply to other things that must be applied to hemp if we want to be successful. And so I definitely think a lot of things are going to change in the next 5 years. And then after that, I say, yeah, about 10 years. That's roughly the estimate I give people, is 8 to 10 years to really be something that somebody can like think about and point to.
Yeah, and I think the next 5 years is going to be more about changing people's perspective and the acceptability, the vision of it. And that's going to be the hard part, but like you said, if you have people who are making, even 1 or 2 really critical products that are replacing something that's out there. I mean, think about it. If you were to replace rubber tires, this is an instant industry changer, something like that. Now it won't be tires, maybe it will be, I don't know. But this is exactly what it needs, is you need somebody to come up with a hemp-based product that's better than the product that's being used currently, cheaper.
Yeah, exactly. And it has to be cheaper. That is a major component, because yes, the environmental factors are really great. Yes, the natural aspects are really great. But when you're trying to sell a big company that's making maybe small margins on certain things on their materials that they're using, like you could say it's 2 times the price, and yeah, it's all these great benefits, but they need it to be cheaper, right? And cheaper is like the major selling point. Like all the other things come along and are great to have on board, but if you don't have that cheaper product, you're not going to get it through to shareholders and to people that maybe don't want to dive into the deep nuances of what hemp is exactly. They just want to know that it's going to make their product better and they're going to be able to sell it for a better price. So yeah.
The word organic on your product doesn't increase the label anymore. People are getting over that marketing ploy.
Absolutely. So kind of to finish this all off, could you tell people how, maybe not get a hold of you, because putting your email online is not necessarily the greatest idea, but to look at the VO products or to look at any of your other products?
Absolutely. So you can go to drclarkscbd.com, and we have our CBD products are there, and there's a way to connect directly to me there. Allow all of our customers to email me direct questions about our products and how they can be used, what are the subtle nuances about them, and I actually provide them feedback. Every night I answer quite a few of these, but I find it very, very good to talk directly to my clients, my customers. It's not a feedback from a dial-up service. It's me. I am really the one answering you. So they can definitely contact me there. Of course, I now will have my HIA association. People can certainly contact me through that. I don't mind answering questions, and I always love having the opportunity to explain to somebody the subtle nuances of why it's better, why it's different, why you should consider it. And anybody who's willing to at least have a conversation, I feel they're at least open-minded enough to tempt and to try and to move forward. I would love to foster that, because the more people that we can get to really understand and to change, the bigger and faster it grows. So,
absolutely cool.
Certainly if you want to provide an email link or something, we can talk about that. But certainly I would love to hear from people. One, because I love the feedback. First, for me to hear about what people are thinking about the industry helps me to guide my visions and to help address some of the concerns. If people are having concerns about, well, I don't see a high enough quality control standard, or I don't get a good enough, data log of what the product has, then I go back and I say, okay, guys, this is what the industry and our clients and our customers are saying. We need to change this. And I want them to know that, yes, we're here to address all of your questions. We are not like many other industries where we just really don't care what your opinion is by our product. We want you to really impact the quality of your life. And so we are always here to answer specific questions directly to our clients, because that gives us great feedback.
Absolutely. Yeah, the best kind of feedback. Well, cool. Thank you very much for joining us, Shawn. It's been a pleasure to talk with you. I'm sure we'll have you on again in the future, and learn a bit more about what's going on in your research and in your own mind and everything. But have yourself a wonderful evening, and we'll talk again soon.
You too, brother. Keep your eye out for a lot of new exciting products coming along.
Thank you very much for joining us here on WhatCannaRadio. If you enjoyed what you heard and you'd like to hear more, please consider smashing that like button below and subscribing to our channel so you can be the first to know when we release new content. If you enjoyed the video so much that you'd like to watch another right this moment, check out our video right here. Or if you'd like to see what YouTube is offering to you, check out the videos over here or down below. Thank you very much for joining us and have yourselves a wonderful day.